Good day. It's September 29th, 2025. The debate on both sides of the political spectrum continues to reverberate over the death of conservative social media vlogger Charlie Kirk, who was shot in Utah at one of his speaking appearances at a local college. The Trump administration has been quick to criticize and suppress anyone in the mainstream media, as well as public figures who commented against Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA. Among them was a very popular late-night comedy host, Jimmy Kimmel. ABC television network suspended the show in response to political pressure from the right of the spectrum, but it was reinstated shortly after. I'm Maribel Villanueva. Welcome to The Pulse. In the House of Representatives last week, MAGA Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina introduced a House resolution to censure Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, over her comment on the death of Charlie Kirk. The censure resolution included removing Rep. Ilhan Omar from her committee assignment. But when the resolution was put on the floor for a vote, 4 Republican lawmakers joined the Democrats in defeating the resolution against Omar. The 4 Republican House members, Mike Flood of Nebraska, Jeff Hurd of Colorado, Tom McClintock of California, and Corey Mills of Florida, referenced their opposition to the resolution, that it was a retaliatory resolution to a lawmaker's speech or comment, and that they do not agree it should be basis for censure. All other Republicans voted in favor of the resolution for fear of a White House threat, according to political observers, while no Democrat voted for it. The vote was 216 to 213 to kill the resolution. Arizona Congressional District 7, which has been vacant since the death in March this year of longtime Democratic Representative Raul Grijalva of complications from cancer, was finally held last Tuesday, September 23rd. Adelita Grijalva, a Pima County Board of Supervisors member and daughter of the late congressman, won the seat against Republican Daniel Gutierrez and 2 other minor candidates. She receives more than 70% of the votes. With Grijalva's win, the Democrats now have 214 seats, with 1 more vacant in Texas Congressional District 18, left behind by the late Congressman Turner of Houston. The Republicans have 219 seats, with 1 vacant seat created by the resignation of Mark Green, who represented Tennessee Congressional District 7 and resigned to take a job in the private sector. The seat left behind by Democratic Congressman Sylvester Turner will be held on November 4th this year. Mark Green's seat in Tennessee will be held on December 2nd also this year. Earlier this month, the seat left behind by the death of Democratic Congressman Gerry Connolly of Virginia's Congressional District 11 was easily won by James Walkinshaw, but with a much higher margin going to the Democratic candidate. The special election in Virginia was held on September 7. Justice Elena Kagan was warned that the U.S. Supreme Court is overriding Congress to hand over new powers to Trump over independent agencies. These agencies were created by Congress as independent of executive branch control, such as the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Reserve Board that oversees the Federal Reserve Bank, according to a report by Newsweek Online magazine. Her dissent came after the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, handed the president a victory allowing Trump to fire Federal Trade Commission member Rebecca Slaughter, while the justices considered whether or not to overturn the 90-year-old president limiting presidential removals. The conservative majority, all 5 justices plus Chief Justice John Roberts, voted in favor of Trump without explanation, as is typical in emergency docket cases. However, they signaled revisiting the landmark 1935 Humphreys executor ruling. Justice Elena Kagan was joined by fellow liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in saying that the court has repeatedly cleared firings that Congress explicitly prohibited, thereby shifting the control of regulatory agencies into the president's hand. Other officials that were fired by Trump that the conservative Supreme Court did not object was a member of the Federal Reserve Board, Lisa Cook, whose term expires in 2038. Many political observers believe she was singled out because she was what the administration believes as a DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion member, because she is a Black woman in the Federal Reserve Board. Other controversial firings include the Commissioner for Labor Statistics and the copyright official of the Library of Congress, which are not employees under the executive branch, but were created by Congress as an independent agency. The Supreme Court, according to multiple media outlets, is sitting on 4 more emergency dockets, which have not slowed down from the dozens of this emergency relief requests from the High Court by the Trump administration. The Trump administration's win in the Supreme Court in June on the Trump versus Casa case limited universal injunctions by the lower courts. However, lower courts were able to go around the Supreme Court's decision and make their own because of the vagueness of the decision or absence of explanation from the High Court. When lower court judges and appellate courts find a legal reason to impose an injunction against the administration, Trump's DOJ runs again to the Supreme Court for relief. 2 important cases in the emergency docket of the Supreme Court includes a request for pause from an order by a federal district judge forcing the administration to spend $4 billion of foreign aid money already approved by Congress. The second is a petition to end the temporary protected status of Venezuelan migrants granted under former President Joe Biden so that the Trump administration can deport them. We're going to take a commercial break. Please stay tuned.
Pure Medical Equipment provides top-notch quality medical supply equipment. Whether to rent or buy, Pure Medical Equipment and Supplies has it all.
Pure Medical Equipment is committed to serve and give back to Southern Nevada.
We deliver medical supplies and rentals to your door.
Welcome back to The Pulse. As Gaza continues to be a killing field, a massive famine is unfolding without relief in sight. According to United Nations officials and dozens of relief agencies, they want to be on the ground but are being prevented by the Israeli Defense Forces. The world is finally coming to terms with the months of desperation and deaths of Palestinians, especially children. France has formally recognized a sovereign Palestinian state at the United Nations during the 80th United Nations General Assembly, which was attended by French President Emmanuel Macron. Macron delivered his speech at the UN saying, "I declare today that France recognizes the state of Palestine." There was a standing ovation among supporters of the Palestinian territory. Macron continued, "The recognition of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people takes nothing away from the rights of the people of Israel, who France supported from day one, and to the respect that it is staunchly committed." The announcement by Macron was not welcome news for the Trump White House and said the pronouncement by Macron will complicate any negotiations with Hamas in releasing the remaining hostages. But such a possibility of negotiation with Netanyahu is disappearing as Hamas negotiators were assassinated by multiple aerial bombings of a building in Qatar where the Hamas delegation were housed. That incident also caused disappointment to Donald Trump for Netanyahu's actions. Independent and individual recognition by a country of the Palestinian statehood is separate from recognizing Palestine as a member of the UN, where the final say comes from the UN Security Council, where the US is one of them, and are certainly to oppose it under the Trump's administration. As of 2022, already 138 countries out of 193 members of the United Nations recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. In their definition of the Palestinian state, it is a territory consisting of the Gaza Strip and the Mediterranean coast of Israel and the West Bank where Bethlehem is. In another response from other countries regarding Palestinian genocide, as described by many, Spain recently imposed a total arms embargo on Israel products. It prevents oil tankers who supply fuel for the Israeli army from docking in Spanish ports, bans importation of products from illegally occupied territory like Gaza, and bans entry into Spain of anyone involved in the genocide, human rights violations, and war crimes in Gaza. This was a broader effort imposed by Spain against Israel, as announced by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. A diplomatic stance against Israel's continued military action against the population in Gaza. The investigations of a corruption scandal in the Philippines involving government funds allocated for a flood control project has just gotten much bigger. There are close to 100 people likely to be implicated, from private construction companies, officials of the Department of Public Works and Highways, elected officials in the House of Representatives and Senate, and officials of the Commission on Audit, or COA. After 2 weeks of hearings in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee and the House of Infrastructure Committee, where more than a dozen DPWH and contractors had been questioned, including contractors' licensing agency known as PCAB, the Center of the Investigation Curly Discaya and Zara Discaya, who own 9 construction companies, DPWH District Engineer Henry Alcantara and Assistant District Engineer Bryce Hernandez, both of Bulacan Province District, finally did a tell-all in their affidavits. In their sworn statements, they also requested to be placed under witness protection program for fear of their lives. The pattern of corruption in public works projects that has been in existence as far as the 1960s is finally getting its reckoning. Presidential administration after presidential administration had not been able to stop this practice of stealing big funds from government projects by officials and politicians until this time, when the current president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., had the political will to investigate these funds and projects because of massive flooding in central Luzon after personally inspecting the calamity areas. The president started asking questions. What happened to the flood control projects funded by the government in billions of pesos? He asked Congress oversight committees to investigate the funds and the project. The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, the Philippines version of the Oversight Committee, obtained testimonies of how massive the theft of government funds was, with only about 30 to 40% of government project funds actually going to contractors. The bigger bulk of the project money ended up going to elected officials and officials in the Department of Public Works and Highways who are in charge of implementing these projects. According to District Engineer Henry Alcantara, he was getting instructions from the Undersecretary of the Department of Public Works and Highways after a particular project had been funded by Congress as to who gets what and how much goes to who in millions of pesos of the project funds, leaving only half or less to the contractors who were expected to do and complete the projects. The contractors were expected to just complete a substandard project with the reduced money they got. The worst kind are the so-called ghost projects, which are only paperwork, but funded and reported as completed in the bogus documents that were signed off by an auditor from the Commissions on Audit and in collusion with DPWH officials. As the local citizens in the area described what they now know, the officials get the money, we get the flood and disaster. 20 of the Department of Public Works and Highways officials and 5 contractors are now defendants of multiple graft charges with the Ombudsman, the Graft and Corruption Prosecution Agency. The defendants included 1st Bulacan District Engineer, who was already fired, Henry Alcantara, former Assistant District Engineer Bryce Hernandez and JP Mendoza, and contractor company owners Curly Discaya and Zara Ziscaya, Sally Santos, Mark Aravalo, and Robert Imperio. 2 members of the House of Representatives were named by several witnesses as allegedly involved in the flood control project's affair. Leyte Province Congressman Martin Romualdez, a relative of the president, and Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldi Co. A witness has come forward to tell all about cash delivery and multiple suitcases of cash, which the perpetrators codenamed basura, or the Tagalog term for garbage. Some senators may also be implicated, but the investigators are still looking for a definite link and witnesses. We will take a commercial break. Please stay with us for the world news.
Pure Medical Equipment provides top-notch quality medical supply equipment. Whether to rent or buy, Pure Medical Equipment and Supplies has it all.
Pure Medical Equipment is committed to serve and give back to Southern Nevada.
We deliver medical supplies and rentals to your door.
Welcome back to The Pulse. Here's a story from Malawi and Central Africa. Al Jazeera reports that a $15,000 U.S. visa bond prevents Malawians from pursuing their American goals. Foreign businesses and scholarship recipients may be excluded from the possibilities due to new U.S. laws pertaining to Malawi and Zambia. In Malawi's rural valleys, where homes are made of mud and grass and electricity is sparse, Tamala Chunda spent his evenings crouched over borrowed textbooks, reading by the low light of a kerosene lamp. During the day, he helped his parents care for the family's few goats and tended their half-acre corn crop in Imilyalini hamlet, around 400 kilometers or 249 miles from Lilongwe, the capital city. By night, he read until his eyes ached, believing that education was the only way to break free from the poverty that had shackled his community for centuries. He performed well on his final exams, placing in the top 10 of his high school class, thanks to that conviction. Then in May of this year, a letter arrived that seemed to validate all the late nights and all the games that were given up as a child, a full scholarship to the University of Dayton in Ohio, USA. For the first time, Chunda told Al Jazeera, "I felt like my life was about to change, not just for myself, but for my whole family." The news of the medal brought joy to his grass-thatched home as family and neighbors gathered to commemorate what seemed like a rare victory. His parents, subsistence farmers dealing with drought and rising fertilizer costs, commemorated the occasion by slaughtering their most valued goat, a rare indulgence in a village where many people live on a single meal per day. Distant neighbors even walked for miles to congratulate the boy who had become a source of hope for the children around him. However, just a few months later, That dream fell apart. The U.S. Embassy notified Chunda that in order to go, he would have to pay a $15,000 visa bond, which is more than 20 years of average income in Malawi, where the GDP per capita is only $580 and most households live on less than $2 per day, according to the World Bank. That scholarship offer was the first time I thought the world outside my village was opening up for me, he remembered. Now it feels as if I'm being informed that no matter how hard I work, doors will remain sealed by money I will never have. On August 20th, 2025, under the Trump administration, the U.S. State Department introduced a year-long pilot program requiring many business B1 and tourist B2 visa applicants from Malawi and neighboring Zambia to post refundable bonds of $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 before traveling. The program, modeled on a proposal first floated during the Trump administration in 2020, is intended to curb visa overstays. But Homeland Security's own statistics suggest otherwise. In 2023, the department reported the Malawian visitors had an overstay rate of about 14%, which is lower than that of numerous African countries that are not subject to the bond requirement, such as Angola, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Liberia, Mauritania, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. This is just one story from worldwide effect of policies under the new administration. Multiply that by millions around the world who also suffers from the cancellation of U.S. aid programs. In news from South America, Brazilian police boost effort to trace gold from illegal Amazon mines and apprehend smugglers, according to a report from Reuters. Brazil's federal police can now trace whether gold came from an illegal mine in the Amazon rainforest, and investigators told Reuters they are expanding the program to other countries in the hopes of apprehending more criminals who are attempting to avoid Brazil's tightening enforcement by smuggling gold across the border. Gold prices have risen to new highs this month as political uncertainty around the world has prompted investors to seek safe havens. Rising prices provide a strong incentive for those who illegally mine the precious metal in the Amazon jungle. The Brazilian initiative catalogs gold DNA, the metal's distinctive morphological imprint, to link each piece of gold confiscated from suspects to environmental damage caused by illegal mining in specific rainforest areas. In 2023, Brazil used the approach to prosecute its first case. However, as criminal gangs spread their reach, transporting gold from illegal mines in one country to smelters in another, authorities believe they must expand their gold library to stay up. When we have samples from all gold-producing areas across the Pan-Amazon region, our gold database will be complete, allowing us to scientifically identify the origin of seized samples, said Humberto Freire, chief of the Amazon and Environment Department at Brazil's Federal Police. Some expansion work has already begun. A series of accords negotiated by Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and France's Emmanuel Macron allowed police in Brazil and French Guiana to obtain samples from each other's databases, thereby increasing investigator cooperation. Freire met with Colombian Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez in August to discuss the program's implementation. Criminal groups in Colombia frequently use illegal mining operations to launder drug trafficking money. The Brazilian Federal Police's work in tracing also prompted Interpol to create the Gaia Project, which is funded by the German government and aims to train police agencies around the world to apply the Brazilian approach of categorizing gold. Interpol's Secretary General Valdeci Urquiza, a Brazilian federal police officer, stated that he supports endeavors to map gold-producing locations as a method for conducting effective investigations into illegal mining. In a report from the Associated Press, the Ukrainian president said the world is in the most dangerous arms race in the human history. President Volodymyr Zelensky told global leaders on Wednesday that the world is in the most destructive arms race in human history and asked the international community to act against Russia immediately, claiming that Vladimir Putin intends to spread his war in Europe. In a grim assessment of today's world, he warned the annual high-level meeting of the United Nations General Assembly that weak international institutions, including the United Nations, have failed to prevent wars in Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and elsewhere, and that international law cannot help nations survive. He said, "Weapons decide who survives. There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons." Zelensky addressed from the stage in the big assembly hall a day after meeting with President Donald Trump, who praised Ukraine's efforts while condemning Russia. Trump said on Tuesday that he believed Ukraine could return all area lost to Russia, a dramatic contrast to the U.S. president's repeated calls for Kyiv to make concessions to end the war that began with President Vladimir Putin's February 2022 invasion of its smaller neighbor. Zelensky made no remark on the unexpected U.S. pivot, stating simply that he had a good meeting with Trump and many other strong leaders. He added that, together, we can change a lot. He thanked the United States and Europe for their support and asked other United Nations members to denounce Russia while it keeps dragging this war on. We will leave it at that, as we are out of time for this week's edition. Please join us again next week here at The Pulse. I'm Maribel Villanueva. Thank you for watching.